Our reading for today comes from Luke, the 7th chapter, verses 11 through 17. A little while later, Jesus went to a city called Nain. His disciples and a great crowd traveled with him. As he approached the city gate, a dead man was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow. A large crowd from the city was with her. And when he saw her, the Lord had compassion for her, and he said, "Don't cry." He stepped forward and he touched the stretcher on which the dead man was being carried, and those carrying him stood still. Jesus said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." And the dead man sat up, and he began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Awestruck, everyone praised God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding region. Here ends our reading. I had the privilege yesterday of presiding over a funeral. And in that service, we had a procession that stretched from here in Latrobe all the way over to Westmoreland County Memorial Park Cemetery. And we spoke in that procession about what a hurry folks are in these days. How more often than I wish was true, people will race to get in front of the funeral procession so they don't get stuck. They'll cut into the middle of the line of cars in order to deal with their own day and not worry about those whose lives are on hold because of a death. But the funeral procession that Jesus bumps into in this small town in the middle of nowhere, Nain, presents a much different picture. We are told that this scene leads to the collision of two large groups, the large group who has begun to follow behind Jesus, and the large group that is following behind the body of a young man. Among the crowd of grievers is a widow mourning the death of her only son. Now, we've spoken before about the plight of a widow in Jesus' day, that without a husband or even a son to care for her, she could not own property. She could not make a way for herself, or I should say, not faithfully. It was tricky. How dependent upon the men of her family this widow would have been for security in society. And with the death of both her husband and now her only son, this woman's future is destitute. She feels as good as dead. There are no pleas to Jesus for a miracle. No one goes and begs for Jesus to fix this. But Jesus, it says, is moved with deep compassion. He goes to this grieving woman and he says, "Do not cry." He speaks to her in the depth of her grief. And then Jesus goes and he does something quite unexpected. He touches the bier. That's the cot that they use to carry a body or carry the casket of one who had died. This is a risky thing for a religious leader to do, to touch something that was holding death, because that would essentially make him unclean and unpresentable for the religious community. He would have to go through all sorts of rituals to become clean again and be restored in community. And instead of staying back and saying, "Don't cry, I'm so sorry for your loss. If you need anything, call me," he goes to the very depth of her pain and joins her in the mess. He touches the bier. And then he raises that young man. It's easy for us to label this as a story of a miraculous resurrection. But this is more than the story of a resurrection. It's two. There are two resurrections that happen in this story. Because not only is that young man restored to life, not only does he sit up and say, "What did I miss?" But that woman is restored to life as well. It is not the woman's faithfulness that saves her, that brings her into new life, restored life. It is Jesus' heart for the hurt and the lost, for the broken and the hurting. The story of the widow of Nain is a story for us that demonstrates Jesus' willingness to get down into the mess of our lives, to make himself whatever is needed in order for us to hear the words, "You are so loved, and you are not lost. You are not alone. Don't cry. I'm right here with you." He does this for us. He resurrects us, not only someday, but today. He enters into the mess and the pain of our lives and breathes new life into us so that we can do the same for others. Others who were tempted to say, "Thoughts and prayers." He demonstrates for us what it is to enter into the fray and to live a life of resurrection. Thanks be to God. Amen.